At long last, a new Fenway Rundown podcast. I'm Chris Cotillo. Sean McAdam here too. Uh, First and only one of the week. It's been a week since we've been with you, but I moved. We could not get the Wi-Fi going. Excuses, excuses. The Red Sox are off today, but we are not. Red Sox coming home after a relatively disappointing road trip that we will get into. Sean, we'll start there. San Diego and Houston. You were not there. I was not there. Chris Smith was for us. There wasn't like a ton in the way of news or big transactions. There were some roster moves Monday. Giovanni Moran. We're not going to really get into that. But 6 games against good teams. The Red Sox have been rolling, and they lose 2 of 3 and lose 2 of 3. And I think if there's some close ones, but overall, I think I would describe it as, 2 blowout wins and 4 meh losses. Not the end of the world. Not great. What are your takeaways from the last
Yeah,
6 days?
I'm kind of with you. It was probably to have a 3-3 trip would have been acceptable. So they fall a game short of that. You're playing 2 quality teams on the road, long flights. Inarguably, their toughest road trip that they had remaining in terms of the quality of the opponent. Incredible as it may seem, there are now, 3 road trips left in the season. There is one at New York and Baltimore, Yankees tough, Baltimore not. There is one at Diamondbacks, at Athletics, both teams struggling under 500. And finally, at Rays, at Jays in the final 10 days of the season. So you can look at it this way. They got their hardest remaining trip out of the way.
Well, 2 in a row. Well, other than Minnesota, that Chicago and Philly trip, probably those are the two of the toughest ones of the year.
Yeah. And they survived. 2-4 isn't what you're aiming for, but it's not disastrous.
Yeah.
Come home now, and it gets easier schedule-wise. You've got the Marlins, you've got the Orioles, and then after the Yankees and Orioles on the road, Pittsburgh comes in. So 3 winnable series at home, a winnable series on the road in Baltimore. If you win those series and split with the Yankees, I think you're in pretty good shape as you head into September. As you mentioned, all 4 of the losses they were in, they fell behind 7-0 or 7-1 to 1 and came back to have score 6 and have the potential tying run in scoring position and another. They weren't really blown out of any game. A couple of wonky pitching performances in there. That concerns me a little bit when you look at both Giolito and Bayo not having great starts the last time out. And then, of course, Crochet. You don't expect to lose his starts, and he was just off. Even someone of his stature is going to have one of those every once in a while. Just came at a bad time.
Yeah. Resetting. Toronto plays, like, as we record this, before their game at Wrigley. Or I guess it's actually at home, but they're playing the Cubs. Red Sox are 4.5 back. The Yankees are a game and a half behind the Red Sox there. In the wild card, the Red Sox have that second spot. They're a game and a half back of the surging before last night Seattle Mariners. They're a game and a half clear of the Yankees, and they're 2.5 games clear of Cleveland. And so, everybody lost yesterday. Basically, you didn't really lose a ton of ground other than the Seattle thing, which first wild card, second wild card, it's to me, it's not that big of a difference.
The difference between home and road, though.
Yeah, right.
That first round, that's significant when all 3 of those potential wild card games are in the same city. So
yeah,
possible that if you don't open that series with with home field advantage, your season ends on the road after 2 games or 3 games.
Right.
So it behooves them to try to finish. Even if they and I was talking about this earlier on our live mailbag with Lauren Campbell. The division is not out of reach, certainly, but they have to stay within striking distance to make that series in Toronto in late September meaningful.
Right.
I mean, you kind of have to go in there within 2 games of the Jays to still be in play for the division. Then you take 2 out of 3 with them, pick up a game, and go home for the final series of the year. Hope that the Tigers have locked down that central They're not playing for anything. You run the table, Toronto slips up, and you somehow win the division. At the very least, though, there's incentive to try to finish first among the wild card teams
Right.
because you get to be home. And we know this year in particular how big an advantage Fenway has become for them, and conversely, how they have struggled on the road, as we just witnessed.
39 and 22 at home, 27 and 34 on the road. The bigger picture thing I was going to say about the standings are, in years past, it's been, well, they're in that group of teams and there's a lot of them and there's not a lot of separation. As we sit here on August 14th, you have the Guardians are a game behind the Yankees and 2.5 behind the Red Sox. Three of the four of, three teams are going to get in. The top four separated by 4 games in Seattle, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and the Guardians. Behind them, the Rangers are 3.5 back of the Yankees, 5 of the Red Sox.
Yep.
The Royals are 4 back, 5.5 of the Red Sox. The Angels are 5 back, 6.5 of the Red Sox. And then you get into, the Red Sox are 7 ahead of the Rays. They are 8 ahead of Minnesota, who traded their whole team. To me, they have a 5-game lead over, Texas, or 5+ over Texas, Kansas City, the Angels. Unless one of those teams gets really, really hot, it's almost hard to make up that many games over, 6 weeks, whatever it is. And so you're looking at, and I'm sure the probabilities, which you could pull up quickly here, say the same. 4 teams for 3 spots in Seattle, Boston, New York, Cleveland. Obviously, Seattle and Houston could flip flop or whatever. But to me, like, it's going to be, and I think we both have said all year the Rangers are super talented. Kansas City's been middling all year. I don't think the Angels or the Rays scare us at this point. To me, it's 4 teams for 3 spots, barring a late surge, maybe Texas, but not counting on it.
Yeah, I agree. It really is playing for seeding at this point, whether you believe the division to still be within their grasp or not. It's
No,
about
I mean, I think that, it could be Seattle, New York, and Cleveland get those 3 spots.
yeah,
That's,
it could be. I mean, I still think that while Cleveland pitches well, they just have a hard time scoring
and a
runs.
minus 27 run differential too.
Right. The bonus they're going to get without looking at their schedule down the stretch. They probably have a couple of series left with the White Sox, although they just played them. So it's funny with with kind of the not quite balanced schedule, but the changes where you're only playing 4 series within your division, you can get those wrapped up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like the Red Sox have 3 games left with Toronto of the final 42. In past years, you would almost always have of the 4 other teams in the division coming to Fenway and the Red Sox going to those 4 teams.
Yep.
That's not going to happen in September. The Yankees will come in, but they'll be done. The Red Sox will be done going to New York. Toronto is already done. They've made their 2 trips to Boston.
Same with Tampa.
Same with Tampa. That's a road series. So, and then Baltimore, because it's almost back to back here coming up in the next 2 weeks, they'll be done as well. So, it isn't necessarily all these games within your division, which would help Cleveland if it were beating up on a Minnesota team that's fading, a Chicago team that's not very good. You may end up having, like the Red Sox do, the last series of the year being a team from outside your division or even an interleague contest.
Yeah, well, the Red Sox obviously
have coming up with the Diamondbacks in early September.
Yep, and the Red Sox end with the Tigers. Cleveland ends with the Rangers in a series that could be very important for what we're talking about here, as those 2 teams are in the mix. This is the point in the year where 2 weeks clear of the trade deadline. It's that's kind of in the rearview mirror. I made this point talking to somebody, I think radio yesterday in Maine. Like, this is the point where you see that separation Alex Cora talked about. Well, teams get better and you might stay the same. We've seen that with Seattle. They've surged a little bit. Milwaukee, not that they had a very inspiring, crazy trade deadline, right? But they've obviously been, or cannot lose in the National League.
The
Red Sox
scuffling, the Yankees were scuffling.
The Red Sox, you look at what they did, what they didn't do. We talked about that a lot heading into the deadline and since. Matz has been good, and Dustin May delivers a really, really good outing in Houston the other night. So maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, or maybe it was. It's probably too early to tell.
Well, we didn't think that those two players were going to hurt them. We
I
won.
thought I would be in the camp that I thought May was going to hurt them.
Well, it's still early to make a determination there. He's
Yeah,
had two starts. One wasn't very good at all. The other was excellent. So let's see where this goes. I think we knew what you were getting in Matz, a guy with a mid-3 ERA who can give you, more than 3 outs at least on occasion, get stretched out, give you a guy who's, been in the wars before, isn't going to get rattled, but not really an impact end of the game bullpen weapon. Just someone to help you in the sixth or seventh, or even in low leverage spots. The true test is what they get out of May. They're fooling around with his pitch mix and usage. We'll see how that goes long term. They like the cutter. They introduced it to him. It didn't work well the first time. It did the second time. We're still seeing what the impact of the deadline is going to be, but it hasn't been it hasn't impacted the Red Sox hugely one way or the other so far.
yeah, and I think this is a topic of conversation. You get to this time of year, how else can you improve your roster? How else can you get better? How else can you make changes that are going to, play a role down the stretch? You can do it not as much as you could have done it, for basically your whole career covering baseball, where you could add, 15 guys to the roster. Now you can only add two. The Red Sox, I think, do have those spots where they can look to make upgrades. It's the same three areas of the roster where we talked about before the trade deadline: the rotation, the bullpen, and first base. We'll get to first base in a second. I reported last week that there were internal discussions going on about the leash on Walker Buehler. That is indisputable and true. And it was less about them having a certainty coming up in terms of like, oh, this guy's really pushing. We got to get him in the rotation. It was about how long can we move forward with, Buehler and the non-competitive starts and stuff like that. On the road trip, he was
ABB, anybody but Buehler. They didn't have anybody knocking on the door. They were opening the door and seeing, is there anybody out there?
Yeah. So, people I saw the stat last night. Bueller's got a 3.69 ERA in his last 7 starts, dating back to July 1st. So that's like, okay, that's good.
That's 3.5 something since the break.
Yeah. But I mean, he beat the Nationals in an uneven start. He pitched okay against the Rays. He dominated Philly and dominated the Padres, right? Well, that was 2 good outings. Against the Dodgers, didn't get through 5. Against the Astros, both times, last night was not great. The 4 runs, the 2 big, the hit and homer by Diaz, and then.
But if we're looking at the last 2, the 2 ago in San Diego was excellent, shutting out an excellent Padres lineup. And even last night, we hear this all the time from Alex Cora. Well, if 3 runs or over 6 innings is a bad one,
it was 4.
True, it was 4. But if that's the bottom, you're being competitive and you're staying in the game. They didn't win last night. He gave up a 2-run homer when they were trying to keep it close. That didn't help. As it turned out, they didn't do anything offensively either. If 6 innings and 4 runs is a bad Buehler start, they can put up with that. If it gets worse than that, then they got to look for options.
So this 7 outing stretch where the ERA is 3.69, the FIP is 5.60. He's given up 6 homers. He has 19 strikeouts, 18 walks, and has given up 40 hits in those 39 innings. Like, I understand that he was good against the Phillies, and I understand he was dominant the other night against San Diego. But this is a guy that, like,
he's walking a tightrope often.
The underlying numbers do not suggest like that much improvement. They are 5-2 in those games. They're 12-9 in his starts overall, actually, which is a testament to something about this team. But to me, I just don't think you can look at, and I know you're maybe encouraged by his 2 outings on the road trip. I'm really Like the one in San Diego is probably his best of the year. I'll give you that. I don't think it's changed the calculus of them assessing the spot moving forward. I think they are going to continue doing that. He'll pitch, I guess, the first one against Baltimore and then the last one in New York, right? So that
Yep.
Sunday night baseball start, that's probably, a big one if
Yeah,
he's still in the
that
rotation
by
at that
then we'll
point.
have an answer as to whether they're going to stick with him or whether it's time to move on.
And at this point, it's a 1 year deal. You were going to be close. We're getting close to August 15th, August 20th. Do you want to see if his stuff can play out of the bullpen? Maybe. Could you DFA him? Also possible. I mean, I think that's all in play. I
Yep.
think they're considering it, and it's coming at a time where, again, I don't think you have like this world beater guy ready to come in the way that, we looked at, oh, if this guy's struggling, Anthony's going to come up, or this guy's struggling, Meyer's
Right.
going to come up.
You're
They
looking at
have
you're
Kyle
looking at two
Harrison
options
and
basically.
Criswell.
One is Criswell, just a sinker slider guy, is not going to overpower anybody.
Yeah.
There are going to be balls in play. Sometimes that's not great with the way that infield plays behind them. And the other is a rookie in Peyton Tolle. Now that
No,
they
I think Harrison's way above Tolley on the
yeah,
list.
I'm sorry. I didn't have him in the mix,
And
but
he's been a lot better the last few.
yep, but two scoreless starts. I think he's got a
Yeah.
shutout string of 10 innings now over his last two. And that's the guy, obviously, I think they would go to. Criswell's fine for a spot start, and he deserves credit for pitching as well as he did back on August 1st when they plugged him in there, when they were trying to give some extra time to Crochet. Good for him. He's done everything that they've asked of him. But obviously, there's a higher ceiling with Harrison, and maybe even a roll of the dice with Tolle here and there.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's a year after he's drafted to put him in a pennant race and ask him to start games when they've been shortening his stints. I think is crazy. I think it's much more likely we see, Sandlin out of the bullpen, Harrison in the rotation. Regardless, I guess the general point is, in my mind, this rotation is back to a hanging on by a thread point. And I'm not worried about Crochet. As you said, everybody has blips. You do get worried about Bayo and Giolito because, like they have been so good for so long. There's going to be a regression to the mean at some point. Not that those guys aren't good pitchers, they are. And Buehler, we just discussed, and May, you don't know what you're going to get. And behind that, it's not, people forget this. Houck, Dobbins, Crawford and Sandoval out for the year. That's four guys that they thought they could count on in some form at some point. Richard Fitz, I don't think they're going to be, keen on giving him another opportunity here down the stretch. So Kyle Harrison, roll of the dice. Whoever it is, roll of the dice. It really, it's thin. Cora said yesterday that we're deeper than people think we are. I would disagree with that. It's thin right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking that the changes they've made with Harrison are going to stick, and we're going to see something close to those results that he's had at AAA in the big leagues, that's not an easy bridge to jump there. You don't know how he's going to do facing major league lineups for the first time in a few months. But at least, there's a floor there where you would expect him to keep you in games. But to think that he's going to come up and give you 10 scoreless innings in his first two is probably wishful thinking.
Yeah. So, again, I've been saying this for weeks. Every team, of course, that this year is kind of in this boat. They are a rotation injury away, especially in the top three, from catastrophe. In my mind, it's not about setting up a playoff rotation. I feel like they have the three guys to do that, and they're a good three. And maybe if you need a fourth, I don't know where you go at this point. You ride the hot hand. Maybe Buehler turns it on, throwback style in a couple months. We'll get there when we get there. To me, hanging on by a thread. And that brings me to the next section of the roster, the bullpen, which is still, I think, light on guys that you would be able to throw in a playoff situation. On the roster right now, Sean, are Isaiah Campbell, Jordan Hicks, and Giovanni Moran. I mean, those are three guys that you would not want under any circumstance pitching for you in October. Justin Slayton here
Well,
probably sooner.
let's narrow the window down. Chapman
Right.
is out of the equation. He's the closer.
Yeah.
A one-run game in the eighth inning, other than Garrett Whitlock, who do you feel good about right now?
Wilson,
If they're lefties.
if they're lefties, yeah.
And maybe Weiser.
I don't. really ever.
He's not pitching as well as he did the first 3 months. He is pitching better than he did in July. It's kind of come back a little bit, but still not a dominant swing and miss guy. That's, to me, was their number one need at the deadline that they fanned on. They did not go get a power arm in the eighth inning to miss bats. And, maybe that's going to be Justin Slayton, but let's look at the calendar here. He's yet to face live hitters.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to do that 2, maybe 3 times. You're talking about a good 10 days right there. And that's if they choose not to have him go on a rehab assignment and come right onto the active roster.
Right.
You're looking at almost the end of August in a best case scenario with no guarantee that he's going to hold up physically or be the guy he was early in the season.
And the point that I would make on him, the stuff is great. And I think he's, I don't know if we're going to go with elite the second year. Rule 5 guy has obviously been hurt a lot. When he's on, the ceiling's very high. This number is still, not a huge sample size, is what it is. 23 and a third innings before getting shut down this year, 16 strikeouts. That's 6.2 per 9, way down from last year.
Doesn't make a lot of sense for a guy who throws as hard as he does.
Right. But if you're looking for that swing and miss arm, that's the numbers there suggest you're not getting that. I'll give you that he's going to be good and he's going to be, in that kind of triple threat with Whitlock. But to me, Hicks wouldn't make a postseason roster. To me, obviously Moran and Campbell are just placeholders. They need, somebody to come up, whether it be Sandlin, whether they get lightning in a bottle on a hot streak from Guerrero or Zach Kelly or one of these hard throwing guys who can give you a good month. There's still a couple arms short there. And again, brings me back to, if any of the guys who are in the inner circle of trust right now, whether that be Chapman or Whitlock, who have both, we talked about Chapman all year long, outstanding. Whitlock is in that category too now. He's been really, really good for a prolonged stretch. Good for him. He's, after what he's been through, injuries and everything else, good for him. Beyond that, Matz and Wilson can do their jobs. I wouldn't trust Weissert. And you're an injury away from catastrophe there. So again, another short area of the roster, especially when you get into playoff games and you have that quick hook on a starter. Bayo runs into trouble in the third inning and you need to go to someone else. The deck of cards to me falls a little too quick. I think that's still a big concern.
Yeah. Look, you have to have a deep and dominant bullpen to go far in October. You obviously need good starting pitching too, to make sure that you're not falling behind by multiple runs early and playing catch up. That's a loser's approach in the postseason, but you also need to lock down leads in the 7th and 8th inning. Obviously, as you said, the 9th inning is not an issue. I would argue they have as good a closer as there is in the game right now. I wouldn't have said that at the start of the season, but Chapman has been outstanding, A+ across the board. You feel great about having him go out to protect a 1-run lead, but games often turn in October in the 7th and 8th, and right now they're thin there.
And then the last area, which a development on this right before we logged on to record, first base, I think, still light. Romy's had a great year. They're not going to trust him to play every day. If you do that, he's going to wear down. That's just kind of who he is, an injury-prone guy. He's hit right. He's a little bit better lately. We know the strength. Keep him in his role. Abraham Toro is playing too much in the last 49 games and 184 plate appearances. He's hitting .202 with a .572 OPS, 3 homers, 6 doubles. Yeah, it's time.
There's no slug in the game.
No.
And I checked today because I'm writing about something similar to what we're talking about for the MLB Notebook, which will be up tomorrow morning on.
Why do you think I'm going down this path of questioning?
Yes. I was stunned to find that Abraham Toro is a -3 defensive runs saved at first base. I was expecting that number to be closer to double figures. He's been, good guy, contributed early, a nice surprise, but he's been awful defensively at first base. I mean, dropping routine throws. That makes me question the efficacy of defensive runs saved, because when he's only -3, that's not even close to where I thought that number was going to be. The eye test suggests it is much, much worse than that. It's hard to say now that he deserves a spot on the roster.
Yeah.
I mean, he's giving you no power, 8 extra base hits in the last 2 months. He's hitting basically at 200, and he's not helping defensively. And because he's a switch hitter and can hit lefty, he's getting the majority of the starts, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah. So, what are the answers? Christian Campbell, Justinson Garcia, probably not. And today, a new entry in Nathaniel Lowe, a guy that you wrote the Red Sox had poked around on when they were looking in the wake of Tristan Casas' injury. This is a guy who has not had a good year with Washington. He's getting paid about $10 million. Obviously, that's a lot less with 6 weeks to go. But a guy who has played well on both sides of the ball previously. He's 30. He's hit righties well in his career as a left-handed hitter. A guy you could non-tender after the year if you wanted to, or you could have him under control for next year. For the acquisition cost, I haven't really looked at this deeply because it happened 20 minutes ago. I say you got to look into that.
I don't see them taking a $3 million flyer here, which would be about what it is. You're slightly less than a third of the season left on a $10 million deal. It'd be around $3 million. That's a lot for a guy who's hitting about 215 and just got released essentially by a last place club. Now, would they feel good about outbidding other teams to convince him? I'm going to guess that he clears waivers, because that $3 million again is a lot.
Well, he gets the minimum at that point anyway.
If he clears.
Yeah.
Right. But then it's a matter of he's a free agent and you've got other teams that might be interested. Do they feel good about saying, hey, don't go there, come here? The fact that they can give him some playing time, you would think, from the left side, and that they're a contending team with a pretty good shot of making the postseason, I imagine that would be attractive to him. I, again, do not see them putting a claim in and making themselves liable for the remaining salary.
You meant outbid in terms of opportunity, not.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. I don't think they're going to take on that salary, nor do I think they should. But if he clears and it's just a matter of, a prorated $770,000, sure, what's to lose?
Yeah, not much because of the way Abraham Toro is playing. What about Campbell? Where do you sit with him at this point?
I don't know. I almost feel like he might be better finishing the year on the upswing at AAA and then getting a fresh start in spring training to try to win a spot next spring. I think there would be a lot of pressure and expectations for him to arrive with 5 or 6 weeks to go and an opportunity to get some playing time. Here's the other thing. How do you play him at first base over Romy against lefties, right?
Right.
That doesn't make sense. And unless you're thinking, okay, he's convinced me that he can hit again, so this way we can keep Rafaela in center more often and play Campbell at second with the occasional game at first, but then you've got the extra outfielder. Does that bump Masataka Yoshida back to the bench, and is one of those 4 outfielders your DH again? There are no easy fixes here because it's not a perfect fit.
Right. And so, I mean, I kind of agree with you on the keeping him there. Just why not, But at the same time, if you think he gives you a better chance to, win games right now and get hot offensively and do what he did in April, they got to explore those opportunities. When you're in the playoff hunt, first time in 4 years, hey, you get to kind of maybe threaten the long term a little bit. And that's why David Sandlin's in play. That's why somebody like Harrison or maybe Tolley and especially Campbell, something to monitor over the next couple weeks. We will be back at Fenway this weekend as the Marlins come into town. Marlins for 3, Orioles for 2. We'll be back on the Fenway Rundown next week.